about the public perception and treatment of autism and has been an unflinching advocate for neurodiversity over her entire life, all while she has spent her life designing efficient and safe slaughterhouses which have become the standard of the beef industry. Her defense of this is that sometimes, and I paraphrase, but it's I think almost an exact quote, it is better to kill a cow than to let it live, and as long as we treat the cow right beforehand, then nothing is lost. Missing from her statement, and I'd argue most, but certainly not all, of the field of disability studies is an explanation for why the cow's neurological differences can warrant mass execution, but hers do not. Especially when the difference between her and any of the bovine victims of her myriad facilities is a culturally recent creation and would have been considered at best academic not even a century ago. Absent an answer to this, the field of disability studies will always be stuck with short-term gains that replicate what it tries to solve for, because the demarcation of what it means to be human will always be subject to cultural shifts, allowing new victims to emerge by throwing them out of the humans-only club and into ethical oblivion. This is not to say that the modern field of critical animal studies is without its own telling flaws. With the exception of a couple notable theorists, and I highlight the work of Kerry Wolf, who had some excellent thoughts to share in his 2009 book, What is Posthumanism?, but both the question of disability studies and critical animal studies together, though he seems to have walked some of these back in his latest book, Before the Law. Aside from the people like Kerry Wolf and others of his like-minded approach, the discussion inside animal studies often seems to be shouts into an echo chamber. Peter Singer, the father of the field, and early evangelist against speciesism, shows this all too clearly when he tries to base his call for ethical consideration of non-humans on the perceived ability to feel pain and pleasure. This has become a double trap for ethics because it firstly means that the protection of non-humans is always based on human understandings of their consciousness, something which will always be fundamentally flawed. But more importantly, it creates a declining system of value that will always rely on ability, leading to people who lack certain keystone abilities ending up being assigned with null value. This is not a hypothetical scenario. Singer himself has declared in the past that he finds it perfectly morally acceptable to murder newborn babies who display signs of disability if, and I quote directly, that was in the best interests of the baby and of the family as a whole, end quote. I wish to repeat this. Peter Singer says, killing disabled babies, A-okay. Just getting that out there. While this level of audacity is perhaps alone in the world of critical studies, remains a trademark of the rest of the field. What remains a trademark in the rest of the field is an internal awareness that only goes so far and shows a deep level of cluelessness outside of the question of the animal. The recurrent call for veganism as the ethical act, typical of authors like Cavalieri, Steve Best, Jerry Francione, and others, for instance, leaves out in the cold victims of racial injustice who often live in so-called food deserts, unable to find or afford vegan meals, much less fresh meals, and certainly offers no solace to those who suffer from severe food allergies, leaving them with no choice, with the choice to either cause severe self-harm or accept that their intrinsic abilities make them inherently unethical. Moreover, the broad brush that most on-the-ground activists use to sweep aside issues of racial or class injustice as a result of speciesism, or is simply irrelevant in modern choices, not only leaves activists seemingly completely out of touch to our target audiences, but also prevents us from understanding the nuance of the modern system that has created the monstrosity of animal agriculture. This is why inside the United States,